So, Jazakallah khair first and foremost for the brothers and sisters involved in organising this event today. And Jazakallah khair for all of you brothers and sisters turning out today, mashallah. The sisters have subhanAllah outnumbered the brothers by a great amount, but may Allah bless every single one of you. And we know the football's on these days, the World Cup's on, so the youth especially are busy, occupied with that. But khair, nevertheless, inshallah, as I was saying to the brother, even if one person turns up, and that one person benefits from this, inshallah, we've done our job. That's one person who can go out there and make a huge difference in society, inshallah.
Oh, I'm certainly going to benefit from this, both in gaining a platform/opportunity to educate people on what to do when facing the fallacious foundation of the Islamic religion, as well as gaining financially to support my work in future. So, thank you for that. Greetings and welcome there, people of YouTube. This is Essence of Forte doing a video response or series of video responses to a talk given by Imran Hussein, The Illusion of Atheism. So, why the title switch? Well, the term atheism or atheist does not speak at all about a single belief I hold, merely the absence of theistic belief. An atheist can believe in many other ridiculous things, but on this single topic, on the question about whether there is sufficient evidence for belief in a God to justify a belief in a God, then yes, I am disillusioned, and I am most pragmatically honest. So with that said, let us continue.
So, the topic that we're addressing today is atheism, and how we tackle atheism, especially in the 21st century. Now, sorry, okay. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So, yeah, the topic we're addressing, inshallah, is atheism, and how we tackle atheism in the 21st century. Because the reality is, we live in a time where this worldview, which is named atheism, is spreading, right? And it's quite popular, especially amongst the youth, in schools, in colleges, in universities. But what I want to do today, inshallah, is I want to present to you the reality of this worldview. And what I want to show you is that there's nothing to be worried about.
If it is nothing to be worried about, then why are you doing a public talk on how to tackle atheism? I'd just like to say that I certainly see religion as a problem, but a fixable one. I believe that the human race has advanced to a stage where they can leave behind their imaginary friends and realize the facts that it has always been us who has guided and shaped our history, not some mystical force beyond our physical world. Also, atheism is not a worldview, it is merely an absence of theistic belief in response to the assertion of the existence of a deity. Let's just get that straight. Humanism is the philosophy I adhere to. If you want, you could claim that to be my worldview, but not atheism itself.
Because the reality is many brothers and sisters, I've come across countless. I get emails almost every other day by brothers and sisters confused about very fundamental basic questions. They're lost. They worry, they freak out. As soon as, for example, evolution's a big thing, right? Let's take that as an example. As soon as evolution's taught in schools, right, and it's presented, generally speaking, it's presented as absolute fact, right? What they present evolution as is that it's absolute truth. This is what happened. Animals evolved, human beings evolved. This is what they teach fundamentally. Now, when they're taught this, because we don't understand the scientific method, because we don't understand the atheist worldview, because we don't really understand Islam to an extent and why we believe Islam is the truth and is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we don't understand these things, we worry and we freak out. We don't know what to do. Our iman's shaken, right? We're left in a state of confusion.
Well, the lack of understanding probably isn't helped by the two falsehoods you just stated there. First off the bat, atheism is not equatable to evolution. Being atheist does not mean that you automatically accept evolution, and accepting the theory of evolution does not automatically make you an atheist. Most religious people are not so stupid as to deny evolution. This then leads me into the fact that no, Evolution is not taught as absolute truth, as the term absolute truth has absolutely no meaning or relevance to science. It is taught as pragmatic truth, as a scientific theory, which now leads me on to the fact that theory in science does not mean the same as the colloquial sense of theory, which is on par with a hunch or a guess. A scientific theory is a compilation of information designated to explain a natural phenomena. A theory in science can be used to make predictions, and it can then be tested. For example, germ theory of disease, which argues that certain microorganisms cause certain diseases. We can test this and show that pathogen X causes disease Y. With evolution, you can predict that no fossil which is found will ever fall outside or before its evolutionary lineage, i.e. a poodle in the primordial era. Every fossil to date, including microfossils, has proven testament to the credibility of evolution. Then, with our understanding of the biology of genetics, we have been able to map out the genome, and yes, it matches our understanding of taxonomy based on the fossil record flawlessly, speaking even more strength to the theory of evolution. Whilst we may not talk about absolutes in science, as we must always be open to new data and new challenges, currently there is only one contender in explaining the origins of biodiversity, and that is the theory of evolution. The God hypothesis doesn't even border in.
And then we're looking for answers. But inshallah, my aim today is to leave you, brothers and sisters, with the correct understanding of some of these fundamental concepts. And so when we understand these things, we will have a completely new perspective on understanding what science is, what atheism is.
From your previous comments, unless they were intended out of irony, I highly doubt you are going to be educating anyone with some valid information on atheism, evolution, or science. I really doubt it.
And how we know Islam is from the Creator, and why Islam is the absolute truth. The absolute truth, and why that's our authority of knowledge. That's our source of absolute knowledge. Not science, not any other method, but Islam and the Quran. Inshallah.
This is just firing off warning signals in my brain. I'm sure this is going to be colourful.
Now, another reason the event itself was organized was because recently an individual named Alim Shah, who is an atheist, who was originally from a Bangladeshi background, a Muslim, became atheist, and he wrote a book called the Young Atheist Handbook. Right? And what they've done now is that they're funding a project by which they are delivering this handbook to every single secondary school in the UK. Every single secondary school. Now, I want us to really understand what's going on here. Already we live in a system where majority of the schools, let's face it, they're not religious-based schools, they're secular schools. They, if anything, generally speaking, they have a neutral position. And on top of it, if our youth, especially the Muslim youth, are being fed this information through such materials such as the Young Atheist Handbook, then they're going to have questions. They're going to be confused. You know, they're going to be challenged. And this is why it's essential we address these things today, inshallah.
And I doubt you could say anything more disgusting than what you just did. Let me play the exact clip again.
If our youth, especially the Muslim youth, are being fed this information through such materials such as the Young Atheist Handbook, then they're going to have questions. They're going to be confused. You know, they're going to be challenged. And this is why it's essential we address these things today, inshallah.
This is a pinnacle defining point between humanism and any of the Abrahamic ideologies, the position on questions. To humanism, questions are the means to a journey not only of self-discovery, but discovery of our universe without the need of magic. To the religions of Abraham, questions are the whispers of demonic forces designed to lead people astray from the path of righteousness. One is open to scrutiny, the other is opposed to it, so much that they have been known to kill people who dare to stray, or even worse, who dare to return to the cave to tell others of the light outside the dark world, the only world they themselves knew before breaking free. But do carry on.
Now, briefly, I'm not going to go into the Young Atheist Handbook too much, but because it's relevant, I am going to address this briefly. See, what Alam Shah has done in the book is that he shares his story. He shares his life story, his experiences, the trials and tribulations that he went through in his life, his tests, as we believe in Islam, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tests us. He was tested in his life, right? And we can relate to this. As a human being, we respect his emotions and his feelings. But what he does, and which I feel like is quite unjust and is not called for, is that he tries to link his emotions and his emotional situation, the emotional situations that he went through in his life, he tries to link these with reason and rationality, with argumentation, right? So the book, what you see, is a combination of his emotional experiences, his emotional upbringing, and the trials and tribulations he went through, combined with arguments, which aren't really understood, and he doesn't really understand these arguments, and he presents them in a very non-genuine way. So what I would suggest, inshallah, as far as this book in particular is concerned, to study Brother Hamza Dortz's article that he wrote in response to this, inshallah. And we're working on with some brothers and sisters to compile email addresses for secondary schools around UK, so we can send this response article to them as well, inshallah. And if you read this article, what Hamza does in a very beautiful way is he breaks this down. What he does is that he respects Alam Shah's emotional position and him as a human being, but he detaches that from his arguments. And what he does is he shows how flawed these arguments are, inshallah. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to address some of these arguments today and show you exactly why they're flawed, inshallah.
Right, well, I did read Hamza's article, and it was just a very basic theistic grasping at straws, often stewed with obnoxious fallacies such as begging the question, pure incredulity, and rampant projection. I really was not impressed. However, I shall still link it down below so people can check it out for themselves. Ultimately, this book is being supported by the British Humanist Association to let young people know that there were others out there who came from religious homes who didn't exactly belong, and that no, this coswallop about you needing God for morality, for meaning, value, or knowledge is absolute and utter absurdity. It's not meant to be the nail to the coffin of God. It's a pocket guide for questioning. It's not designed to tell people what they should think, but to get them to understand how they should think. It's the first step to a greater world of knowledge. We don't have scripture, remember. It doesn't have to be perfect, and it is intended to introduce a younger audience to a wider field of philosophy. You going on about how it's not perfect is like screaming that a GCSE science textbook doesn't contain the exact details or equations to nuclear theory. Your expectation is absurd. Hell, at least this book reads better than the Quran, and nobody is ordered to be put to death on its own authority.
Now, the very first thing I want to do, before we get into the meat of the subject, if you like, is refer to a verse from the Quran, right? And I want to really understand this and remember this throughout the entire talk or lecture, whatever you want to call it. See, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in chapter 2, verse 13, He says, when they are told to believe, as everyone else does, they say, should we believe as the fools do? In fact, they themselves are the fools, but they do not know.
Look, Imran, most of us left the whole, I know you are, but what am I, back on the playground. I know your holy text is primitive as fuck, but really? That's the best your God has? No, ask for evidence, and I shall show myself to you, my child. Just a very childish jab that has zero weight in discussion beyond making the speaker look like a complete and utter arse.
SubhanAllah, this is a profound verse. Now, in particular, this is referring to the hypocrites at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. But this verse applies. The Quran applies throughout time, throughout history. this verse really applies, because what you're going to see is, because what happens is atheism, or atheists, particular atheists, we're not saying all atheists are in the same boat. We're not saying all atheists have an agenda against Islam, right? But they are particular individuals, particular atheists who have an agenda, who have a motive to attack Islam in particular and to break it down, right? And to put shubahat in the hearts and minds of Muslims and to confuse them. There is this agenda amongst certain people.
Again, why is the idea of getting people to ask questions such a terrible one to you? Surely, if we are getting them to ask questions and then they do their own personal investigation and they leave Islam due to their findings that the fallacious arguments of Islamic apologists are without merit, then I seem to have answered my own question there. That's exactly why you are scared of questions, because you can't handle it. You really can't. You cannot support your own position to a point that, yes, you are very afraid that people will start leaving. I find it ironic that you're trying to present asking questions as the atheist position, when no, it's not. Surely it should be the neutral position. However, if you want to equate atheism with asking questions, then by all means, that just speaks to the credibility of the absence of theistic belief compared to the dogmatic theism.
But what I want to show is that if you break down atheism, you really understand what atheism is, what you would see, inshallah, is that it has no basis. It has no basis. And as I normally say, if you like, and this is not disrespect to any atheist, but it's the, see, we respect human beings and individuals, but we don't have to respect ideas, and especially if they're false.
Great, I shall call you out on this. Go out there, campaign to abolish every single blasphemy law in existence. We don't have to respect Islam or its claimed sky wizards. Now you may say that the sky wizard actually exists. Well, if so, let him come down to sue me for slander or libel.
We have to, as Muslims, break them down and present the truth, right? And atheism, in reality, it's an ant in the disguise of an elephant. It's an ant disguised as an elephant, right? You have individuals such as Richard Dawkins and Lawrence Krauss and all of these people. Who knows Richard Dawkins? Yeah. Who's heard of Richard Dawkins? A couple of brothers, mashallah, right? Now I would say he's an anti-theist, right? He's very, very staunch. He's very aggressive, in particular towards Islam. Very aggressive. But when you see the reality of atheism, what you'll notice is what they believe has no basis. It's empty.
That's because atheism is the absence of a theistic belief. Please stop going in circles. You're 8 minutes in and still haven't really given much or presented anything beyond blind assertion.
And the first thing I want to do is I want to detach atheism and science, right? What tends to happen, or what the notion or the narrative out there is, that science and atheism go hand in hand, right? We have science. This is what they say. We have science, therefore we don't need God. We know how things work. We don't need the why, right? We know how the rain clouds form and the rain forms and how it rains. We know how the water cycle works. We know how the human body functions. Therefore, we don't need God. This is the narrative. This is the trap that's being laid out there for us. This is a trap that's been laid down out there for us.
Imran, you need to justify the assertion of why. You cannot merely assert one. This is on par with me going, we know how fire burns, but how dare you say there is no why? Quite clearly the why is genies. Genies are why shit burns. This argument is poor. It is so variable that one can argue for whatever you want, e.g. the flying spaghetti monster is the why to the universe. Stop using this argument. It is junk, and I know you guys get my videos and have seen me debunk this stupid assertion repeatedly. I know you get my videos because I was linked in a response I was never informed about. So yeah, you need to stop being such lying little deceivers, as it really does get to me. You make errors like these again and again and sit there claiming we have no basis.
But when we understand what science is, what we will see is that it's a beautiful method and it's just being hijacked. It's just been hijacked by particular individuals who are trying to use it against theists, against Islam in particular. So So what is science? Let's have a look at science quickly. Science is a method, right? Bertrand Russell, a philosopher of science, he describes science as an attempt to discover by means of observation and reasoning based upon it particular facts about the world. This is what he says. So what, in essence, what he's saying is that science is a method that human beings use to try to come to particular facts about the physical world around us. Through what? Through observations, through doing observations, using our senses, and then basing our reasoning on it, right? And what the beautiful thing is, this is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to do in the Quran, right? Allah tells us continuously, do you not look at the creation? Do you not look into the created world? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, look into the horizons, and within yourselves, there are signs within ourselves. Allah says, do you not look at the camels and how they were created? So what is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us to do? He's telling us to observe. He's telling us to observe the physical world and then use our aql, use our reasoning on this observation and then come to the conclusion that He exists.
Science is not confirmation bias mixed in with speculative assertions. I can objectively show you the fossil and genetic evidence for the origins of man via evolution. I can show you our lineage. All you can do is go, look at the pretty flower, therefore God. When no, actual scientific understanding shows us that once more, this displays evolutionary biology in the development of symbolic relationships for mutual benefit between species. I also love the way that you're going to switch between science cannot discuss God, but it can show the wonder of God. You can't have it both ways.
SubhanAllah, this is how profound the Quran is. The Quran, in other words, is telling us to do science. Muslims don't have a problem against science, the method. The scientific method is a beautiful method that we should use. Because what does science do? It tells us how things work. When we understand the how of things, it allows us to appreciate the creative power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is how beautiful it is. And this is what I want to do quickly, is make the distinction between the how and the why. Right? Now the narrative is, we know how things work, we don't need God. Right? This is what they say. But just because you know how something works doesn't mean there's no why.
No, it means that the why which you are asserting has no basis. To quote the lyrical wonder of the historian himself, "My apologies, but these 3,000-year-old trees pay no heed to your feelings or philosophies. They exist and have existed and will continue to persist long after feeble people cease to resist this glorious story to which they bear witness. Neither myths nor scriptures of men have told a tale so fearsome as is written in the stone. Just because you say this is the way things ought to be, does not affect how things are. Both the universe and the scientific method created to explore the universe couldn't give a shit about your primitive religion."
It doesn't mean there's no why. I'll give you an example. Say this brother here, mashallah, what's your name, akhi? Abdul Rahman. Say Abdul Rahman loves me, yeah? He loves me, and to show his love, what he does, he bakes me a cake, yeah? He bakes me a nice chocolate cake, yeah? Or a nice strawberry cake, yeah? And he comes to me, he gives me the cake, yeah? I take the cake and I don't eat the cake. What I do is I take it to a scientist, right? I present him the cake. What's the scientist going to do? I give him, say, 2 months. He takes 2 months, he studies the cake, yeah? He can come back to me and he can tell me what raw materials were used in the cake, how much sugar was used, how much chocolate was used, how many strawberries were used, how many calories are in this cake, how long it was baked for, right? At what temperature it was baked. He can come and tell me all of these things. He could tell me the how, right? But can the scientist tell me, now think about this, can the scientist tell me who baked the cake for me and why that person baked the cake for me?
Yes for question 1, no for question 2. Forensic evidence could show them who made the cake. As for 2, that asserts a why. Just like the scenario you gave, it is begging the question. You are attempting to smuggle in the conclusion with the original question. That's like me going, a rock slide was chance, nobody or nothing had control over it, was that God? If you say yes, then no, you're lying because I stated nobody had control over it. So you see, by the very design of the question you gave, you've lost. Prove to us that there is a why to the natural world, or just stop yapping on about it.
Can you tell me this? No. beyond the scope of science. This question is beyond the scope of science. Now, if the scientist then said, because I don't know who or why, therefore there is no who or why, is that a sensible thing to do? Of course not. Just because you can't explain something via the scientific method, which is a beautiful method, but is limited, just because you can't explain something using this method doesn't mean there's no explanation.
Which is good, as that's not how science operates. Fact, people exist. Fact, cakes are made by people in 100% of documented cases. Ergo, it would be an extraordinary claim to state that something other than a person made the cake. Fact, there is no evidence for God. Fact, all ontological questions ever solved have had natural origins. Ergo, it would be an extraordinary claim to state that something supernatural created the universe. Your own argument backfires.
Right? And this is what we really need to understand, because what's happening is this trap that's being laid out there. Just tell the people, we know the how. The science gives us the how. You don't need God. We know how thunder happens. We don't need God anymore. We know how the trees grow. We don't need God. This is what they're saying, but the reality is they tell us the how. They can't tell us the why.
No, there is no reason to claim why. You are just asserting it, because your ignorant little mind is incapable of processing otherwise. I think that's enough for today. Overexposure to this level of dishonesty has an adverse effect on my mood. Believe me. Don't know if you can tell. So yes, that's the end of the video. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you would like to support my work, please check out my Patreon and think about donating. Don't forget to click like, comment, subscribe, and share on Facebook and Twitter. It really does help me when you guys do that. Also, feel free to check out my own Facebook and Twitter, where I do post updates now and then. This is Essence of Thought, hoping you're all doing well. Take care and out.